Welcome back. It's good to have a friend and colleague named Colonel John Mills, United States Army retired, another member of our Committee on the Present Danger of China, joining us now to pick up where we left off with Congressman Scott Perry. John, like the Congressman, you have served with great distinction in the ranks of the United States Army. You have a lot of experience in the national security arena besides, notably as a civilian in the Office of the Secretary of Defense, working at the White House and other agencies. You have a deep sense of patriotism. It's one of the things I admire most about you. You are a senior fellow of our Center for Security Policy and bring all of that expertise to bear with us all the time, which is deeply appreciated. Talk to me about what you think of this idea that people like you investing in the Thrift Savings Plan may well find investment funds channeled by the Federal Retirement Thrift Investment Board into Chinese Communist Party owned or operated companies.
Yeah, thank you, Frank. An honor to be with you. The number one thing we need to do to curtail the adventurism of the Chinese Communist Party is cut off their ATM. If you talk to the Hong Kongers, the Uyghurs, the Falun Gong, Christians, anybody who's being oppressed by them, it is absolutely cutting off the ATM. And that is a grave concern, a grave concern. So the thrift savings.
And by that you mean the funding that we have been providing through various Wall Street entities before the present moment, and this question about the Thrift Savings Plan.
Yes, absolutely. The Thrift Savings Plan is essentially the largest retirement fund in the world. It's not only, now, a lot of people don't realize with things that are changing, it's not only the US government civilians, but also with the evolving of the retirement plans for the uniform military. It's essentially also managing those funds. Also, I have a dual fund. I'm both on the military and civilian side. It is crazy that we allow the thrift savings program to be the ATM for the Chinese Communist Party. That is the cash infusion they desperately need to essentially shut us down and put us out of business, peacefully or otherwise. This is mortal, and with the arrangement that was just signed between Xi and Putin, I think the term is literally no boundaries. No boundaries. Okay. I don't know how else to explain to anybody in the listening audience that has an open mind. They intend to put us out of business, peacefully or otherwise, and they are very serious about going all the way, nuclear, chemical, or whatever. The thrift savings program is their ATM, and we've got to cut that off.
Well, I would make the case, and I think you have really, that this would be sort of a branch of the ATM, but a very big one, a very important one. And again, it really speaks to this question that Congressman Perry described powerfully earlier in the program, and that is we have elites in our country who have no difficulty whatsoever providing, especially other people's money, to the Chinese, knowing full well, or certainly they should be fully conscious of the fact that that money is, as you say, John, directly fueling the ambitions of a mortal enemy of this country to destroy it. And it's just unimaginable that this thrift savings plan will once again be imperiled by such an approach. So I'm very pleased that our Committee on the Present Danger of China, and people can find out more about both the committee and specifically the letter that was sent by our chairman, Brian Kennedy, today to the acting chairman of the Federal Retirement Thrift Investment Board, David Jones, and a whole host of others, including President Biden. Don't do this. Don't open this mutual fund window. Don't start supporting in the monies of these retired military personnel, civilians, and those currently serving the enemy of this country. John, I so appreciate your leadership on this, among other things. And I wanted to ask you about some of those activities that you sort of alluded to a moment ago that are being made possible by our funding. There's a phenomenon called the Belt and Road Initiative that is part of Xi Jinping's China Dream. You've been particularly focused on what that looks like at the moment in the South Pacific, the Solomon Islands specifically, islands that were very costly when we had to take them away from the Japanese in World War II. Of course, Guadalcanal being one of the most famous battles of the war. Talk a little bit about what you think is happening there as a result, in part, of the funding by us and its strategic implications.
Well, for those in the listening audience that do not believe that a world conflict is currently underway, let me amplify. We are in the middle of a world conflict. The Chinese have already kicked off the Pacific theater. This is everybody's focused on Ukraine, 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 which is important, and we have to beat down the violent attacks of Putin. But everybody needs to remember Putin is the junior partner. Okay, he is Mussolini to the senior leader. Okay, the real game is China. China has already launched their Pacific campaign. They have gotten around what's called the second island chain. They're actually behind it. A good graphic is in order. I actually did a good graphic in my Epic Times article back in December, essentially postulating what was rapidly approaching, and that was essentially don't get distracted with Ukraine. We have to beat down Putin. The real game is China. China has essentially already cut a deal with the current prime minister in the Solomon Islands, who is essentially a part of a distinct minority. Most of the people in the Solomon Islands want their relationship with Taiwan, want their relationship with America. The current prime minister is essentially, I don't see any other explanation than bought off, literally bought off by the Belt and Road Initiative of the Chinese. He has invited in a Chinese, essentially HADR operation. If you look at the geography, the Solomons is actually behind this all important second island chain of Ulithi, Palau, Sovereign American Territory, Guam, Tinian, Saipan. This puts them, they have already bypassed. The conflict is going on right now. I don't know how else to explain this.
John,
And
you need to explain what HADR stands for. That would be an important contribution to our understanding of this as well.
yeah, humanitarian assistance, disaster relief, a great cover and code word for this is just exactly what they did in Hong Kong: is infiltrate in paramilitary thugs to replace the traditional Hong Kong police. This is what they're doing, is under the guise of humanitarian assistance. They've essentially landed in the Solomon Islands. Australia, our good friend and ally, but has in many ways been not been very helpful in this. And I don't think they understand the game. They're much closer to this, but essentially they could have easily snuffed this out, but instead seem to want to act like John F. Kerry and talk in the abstract, which is a green light for the Chinese.
Well, worse than that, I think they actually sent forces in to try to prop up the government that wants to turn the place over to the Chinese Communist Party, as you say. And I think there's no question that, as in so many of these other Belt and Road targeted nations, there's been a fair amount of graft and you know, freelancing on the part of the government to enable this kind of well, submission of those countries to the Chinese Communist Party and the threat that it poses to the rest of us.